I must be crazy, hallucinated. I'm living, breathing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Curtis Zone, ladies and gentlemen. I, your amazing host, Dylan J. Curtis. Ask you remember to hit the like and subscribe button for more content here on the Curtis Zone. Today we are talking about the video games that we used to love, the video games from the early 2000s that people have enjoyed over the years. And so I was really hoping to do this episode because I have a lot of great video games that I love from the early 2000s. Let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. But before we get started, as always, some news. The first piece of news from the upcoming Sonic the Hedgehog 4, it has been reported that 2 new cast members have joined the cast. The first being Christian Ritter, who will be portraying the role of Amy, and the second being Ben Kingsley. His role has not been announced yet, but it looks like he's going to have a very important role to play in Sonic the Hedgehog 4. However, this is just from what we have heard from the studio. The second piece of news is that Finn Jones will be returning to the MCU as Iron Fist for Daredevil Born Again Season 2. When he'll be coming back for a full membership back to the MCU has been announced. That have rumored that he'll be returning as Iron Fist in Shang-Chi. However, this upcoming Daredevil Born Again Season 2 looks like it's going to be a dry run for him so he can get his sea legs back as Iron Fist. I can't wait for it. The final piece of news is that Matthew McConaughey will be joining the MCU as Green Goblin. When he'll be going and as Green Goblin has not been reported yet, but it looks like he's going to be joining for Spider-Man Brand New Day. That's just me talking. I don't know about the rest of you guys. I can't wait to see him because he is a pretty good actor. Now I'm going to go over the best of the early 2000s video games. We're going to go over fighting games, first-person shooters, RPGs, racing games, mapping games. The list goes on, ladies and gentlemen. There are 12 games I want to talk about, and let's talk about them right now. Alright, let's talk about some games. Sorry, I had to put on some sunglasses real quick. The first game we're going to talk about is Halo. It was a first-person shooter game that came out in the early 2000s, and it had many sequels over the years. The video game followed the story of Master Chief, who was navigating through the universe and fighting the Covenant in a war with the UNSC. He was a genetically modified soldier and who could do anything. I did a whole thing about Halo. You can find it up there. Halo was one of the most popular video games. In fact, people would not shut up about Halo. I'm serious. Every now and then, if they weren't talking about Mortal Kombat, they were talking about Halo. I mean, come on. Look at this video game. The next video game I could not stop playing when I was a kid was Jet Set Radio Future. The video game followed the story of a group of kids who were trying to take down a government group known as the Rakaku Group. And they're doing it by spraying graffiti all over the city, and while at the same time navigating through the world and fighting off the police. The video game was one of the most popular video games. It never got a sequel, but it has been revamped over the years through online gaming. Really fun, and I doubt that anybody would say otherwise. It had a lot of great things, including kids on rollerblades who were spraying graffiti all over the world, and it had great music too. And one of its main characters, the non-playable character, was modeled after DJ Jazzy Jeff. DJ Professor K was modeled after DJ Jazzy Jeff. Who didn't think that was cool? The next early 2000s video game I want to talk about is Bionic Commando. The video game followed the story of a young man who had a bionic arm that he used to swing and travel through the world while at the same time using amazing combat. The video game was a third-person video game that was developed by Capcom. This, along with a lot of other stuff, Bionic Commando was one of the video games that was featured in Marvel vs. Capcom and Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite Wars. It was pretty fun to play. That's just me talking. I don't know about my older brother, but that's just me talking. The next early 2000s video game I used to play was known as Vex. The video game followed the story of a young man named Vex who finds the war talent. And each war talent that he uses, he has to use to fight against evil invaders, while at the same time fighting these things called the Ray Hearts. The Ray Hearts, which are utilized to open up different portals throughout his world of Timberdale. The video game was so fun to play. It had everything that I loved. It had supernatural weaponry, an amazing main character, and it had Ray Hearts. I mean, come on. Who didn't like that video game? The next video game I want to talk about is Brute Force. The video game was a first-person shooter while at the same time was also an RPG game. The video game followed the story of a team of heroes who work for the military who have amazing skills with weapons and tactical combat. You have to travel throughout the universe and play as all these characters. You have your berserker, your monster, your stealth expert, and your sniper. The video game did not get a sequel, but it was fun nonetheless. So fun, in fact, that it was almost made into a movie. However, the movie was shut down. I'm sorry, it was shut down. The next video game we're going to talk about is Brutal Legend. It was one of Jack Black's creations, but it was developed for video games by a different company. Jack Black voices a character named that is also a roadie for an amazing rock band. However, he's transported to another world where he has to use his rock and roll abilities to start a revolution, and he also has to fight against these enemies. It had everything: rock and roll, a guy with a battle axe, and one of the main voice actors was Jack Black. So awesome! I'm gonna be the only person that's currently here that loved that video game. Opposite to Halo was Gears of War. The video game came out in the early 2000s, and it was so cool to see. It was a first-person shooter game where you play as the last surviving members of the human race during an apocalypse, where you have to fight against these awesome enemies that are basically zombies with super intelligence. The video game was so cool to play that I got all the sequels. I got Gears of War 2, 3, and I played them all. I beat them all. My brother and I used to love playing the Horde version on that game. I mean, come on, who didn't love that game? If I wasn't playing Mortal Kombat, I was playing Tao Feng Fist of the Lotus. The game was like Mortal Kombat's ugly twin sister, but so fun to play. It had all the elements of Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, and Tekken inside of it. You played as Fiery Phoenix, where you had to fight against a lot of enemies, including a guy named Exile. Exile, who is so strong. The guy was a freaking wrestler, for God's sakes. Fiery Phoenix was a master of kung fu, and where you have to use his power to fight against all these enemies in a two-player combat game. So fun to play. Who didn't like that game? If I wasn't playing Need for Speed, I was playing Quantum Redshift. It was basically Need for Speed set in a future world where you race in these hovercrafts while at the same time battling for first place and getting the best time. Need for Speed was cool, but Quantum Redshift was so much better, okay? Quantum Redshift had everything: fast paces, exotic locations, not so exotic locations, foreign characters. The list goes on of how cool this video game was. Anybody who didn't like it, they are wrong, they are lying, and they are stupid. This video game was so fun to play, I doubt anyone will disagree. Next, we're going to talk about Panzer Dragoon Orta. The video game was a fast-paced shooting game, aerial combat game that followed the story of a young girl named Orta and her dragon who have to fight against an oppressive government. The video game featured a lot of things that I love: dragons, flying combat, shooting. The list goes on for days. The video game was not the most amazing game ever, but it got a sequel called the Panzer Dragoon Saga, which was developed by Xbox. The game was so fun to play that I wish I was able to keep it, but I lost it after a while. So yeah, sorry about that. Next, we're going to talk about Crimson Skies. Crimson Skies was the most fun video game I've ever had the fortunate pleasure of playing. The game was set in an alternate 1930s where you play as Sky Pirate Nathan Zachary. You pilot a series of planes in aerial combat where you have to fight against enemies and while at the same time gaining money and buying new planes. The video game had everything. It had stunning visuals for its time, and it was even tried to develop that into an animated series, but the series was beat out by a different show. I don't know what it was, but I do know that Nickelodeon tried to develop it. There's one more early 2000s game I want to talk about, and it came out in 2005. It was known as Mercenaries: Playground of Destruction. Mercenaries followed the story of a group of mercenaries who had to go around the world fighting against evil characters while at the same time gathering contracts and completing missions. The video game was a third person open world video game, and it was the most fun that I've ever had to play. The sequel was fun, but the first one was way better. I doubt anybody could say otherwise. Thank you one more time for joining me here on the Curtis Zone, ladies and gentlemen. Remember to hit the like and subscribe button for more content, and do not be shy to get in that comment section and tell me your favorite video games from the early 2000s that were developed by any game system that you played them on. Xbox, PlayStation, GameCube, anywhere, guys. Really talk to me here, okay? I cannot wait for you guys to tell me your favorites. I love you guys so much. I'll see you soon. Peace.